What is your opinion on the Baal Shem Tov Jews who pick and choose parts of all Chassidus? Is it better to pick one rebbe and stick to it, or is this fine? You see, Chassidus is an inspiration. Chassidus is a Torah. Don't misunderstand. Chassidus is a Torah. There's a philosophy that is Chassidus. From the Torah comes Mavoida. From the philosophy of Chassidus is a way of life. But in Chassidus in particular, the way of life is more important than the philosophy. The essence of Chassidus is to have your neshama woken up and to live a neshama life. That's a chassid. A chassid is somebody whose life is defined by their soul, by their neshama. Do I have a problem with people who pick and choose and don't have a rebbe? Of course I do. Because the essence of Chassidus is having a rebbe. And if you don't have a rebbe, so maybe you'll have some of the warmth of Chassidus, some of the joy of Chassidus, maybe even some of the humility of Chassidus, but you don't serve. Having a rebbe is a key component of Chassidus, and this is more and more widespread. You know, in the world today, it's almost considered a positive thing to quote everybody. Now, when you're learning Gemara or Halacha, you must quote everybody. But when you're learning Musar, when you're learning life, I think that the Rebbe thinks you have to have a path. You have to have one path, a Rebbe. You can learn all the Torah in the world you want. You can learn all the Chassidus in the world you want. But you have to choose how you serve Hashem. If you are going to be a Nasher, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews today who are Chassidic Nashers, they taste a little of this Chassidus, I like this about this, I like this about this. There's an expression that I don't know if you're familiar with, which I've been hearing now probably for 10 years. It's called Chabakuk. You know what Chabakuk stands for? Chabad, Breslev, Chabakuk. 4 movements of Jews that are sort of into Ruchnius, and people want to be a Chabakuk. I'm not going to be Chabad, I'm not going to be Breslev, I'm going to be a little of this, a little of this, a little of this, and a little of this. I think it's a problem. I do. I think it's a problem because you need a path. The place where this is going to become a biggest issue in your life is when you have to raise your kids. And you can't confuse children. You know, if you're going to raise your kids, you're going to have to send them to a school. And the biggest mistake you could make is every year to choose a different one. You put your kids in school. They got to be with the same friends. You can change your kids once, maybe twice when they're young enough. I mean, you remember the worst thing in the world would have been to you to have your parents separate you from your friends and from your culture and that world. So if you're a parent and you're raising your children, you have to know what you want your children to learn, because you're not going to be able to. If you're one of those people who tries a little of this, and this, that's very difficult to communicate to your kids. They're going to go to school. They're going to have friends. They're going to have a culture. They're going to have a community. You're going to have to pick which one you want. So even if you personally are a Nasher, and I have a problem with it, I do. I think a person who chooses a little bit of a variety of different paths ends up without a rebbe. And a chassid without a rebbe, in my view, is not really a chassid. What makes us Lubavitchers is not that we learn Tanya. I think we would all agree. What makes us Lubavitchers is that we try our best to live by the teachings of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is our Rebbe, even though none of you ever met him because you were born more than 10 years after he passed away. So it's a painful thing, it's a funny thing, but it's still a fact. If a person is going to be a Nasher, they're not going to have a Rebbe. They're not going to have a direction. They're going to be their own Rebbe. Now, it may work for you, but for your kid, it's going to be very confusing. You need a path. You need a path. If Bali Tshuva have an advantage, and if you're born in Lubavitcher, Nebuch, for the most part, you're stuck in Lubavitch. Are there people who leave Lubavitch and join other groups? Yeah, not a lot, but there are. Are there people from other groups who leave and join Lubavitch? Sure. But most people live the way they were raised. If you were born a Belzer, you're probably going to be a Belzer. If you're born a Misnagid, a Litvak, you're probably going to be a Litvak. If you're born a Lubavitcher, you're probably a Lubavitcher. A person becomes frum, a Baal Tshuva has an option. Because you are coming into Yiddishkeit from the outside, you're a clean slate, you see this incredible variety of different ways of basically doing the same thing. We all have the same Shabbos, the same kosher, the same mikveh, the same tefillin, the same lulav, the same esrog, the same shofar, the same sukkah, the same matzah, the same cheesecake, etc. You get to choose your path. And Bali Tshuva, who are intelligent, will sometimes say, I don't want to commit to this, I have problems with this, I have problems with this. I mean, Lubavitch's greatest asset is the Rebbe. Lubavitch's biggest liability is the Rebbe's Chassidim, because we're not Rebbes, we're just people. And we make mistakes. So if you're an outsider coming into Chabad, you may love the Chabad ideal, but you may have a very big problem with the Chabad reality. In other words, I don't like this teacher, I don't like that principle, I don't like that Derovan, I don't like that Mashpia. But the truth of the matter is, it's life. Wherever you're going to go, the only reason you think other communities are better than Chabad is because you don't live in them. Every community has good, and every community has bad. And in the end, the person has to choose a path for themselves. And as they say in American, take responsibility. In other words, if you're looking for a perfect community of Jews, it don't exist. It's not b'metzias. It's impossible. You choose a path, you will see in any community, good and bad. You go, you get in, and you can't spend your life being a victim. You can't spend your life blaming the whole world. You have to choose a path. So I'm going to be as open-minded as I'll allow myself to be. You don't have to be a Lubavitcher, but you need to be something. You need to be something. To be one of those people who's on the fringe is very, very difficult for you and very confusing for your children. And if you want to choose a hard life for yourself, that's fine, but you don't want to confuse your kids. And I really wish I had an hour to answer questions, but I don't. So this is one of those things that we really should talk about. Next question.